Hi everyone, it's Michael, and I am forcing my poor husband to hold the camera right now because I did not expect this to come today, but it did, and I'm too eager to wait. I'm going to open it now, and then I'm going to have to come back after work and repot them. But these are my new Cypripediums, and I'm so excited, and I just want to see what they look like. I always feel nervous when I'm doing this. Let's see how this went. Oh man. What? These bad boys some air. Oh, they're very, very damp. They're covered in soil. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is stressing me out. Maybe the couch wasn't the place to do this. Okay, you guys, so I have a lot of thoughts about this, and we will come back and talk about it after I come home from work. Okay, that was the longest 9-hour shift of my life because all I've wanted to do all day is come home and repot these and talk to you guys about it because it's such an uncommon plant in my collection, and it's such an uncommon process that I'm undertaking to do this. So that'll make more sense as we move forward with this video, but let me just tell you a bit about the type of orchid I got. I have here 5 of the Cypripedium Acaule. Now, if that sounds kind of unfamiliar to you, it's because it's not commonly cultivated in home environments because it's so difficult, and the success rate with them is very low. So what this orchid is it's from a background of acidic pineland soils in eastern North America. So the ones I got are specifically from Virginia. So the reason these are so uncommon for people is because for a long time there was this understanding that there was a fungus association that was immediately needed for growth that was only present in its original grow environment. Now, more studies have shown that that fungus is really necessary for the germination of the seed, but not necessarily for its continued growth. So that's something to know, and that's kind of opened it up a bit. So now nurseries are starting to develop it in flask. Now here's the thing, I don't think mine came from a flask. I think mine were foraged from the wild, which has a whole set of ethical implications I don't even want to touch. But beyond that, it really diminishes the possibility of success with this. I'm hoping, and I'm trying to stay very positive about it. But if I had done my research before I bought these orchids, I would have known that when you take them from the wild, they are not acclimated to a home environment. They are not acclimated to not being in their acidic soils. And the likelihood of them really thriving is so much less than if I had purchased a plant that was raised from flask and really raised into a home environment or intended for that kind of culture. So that being said, I just knew that I wanted to try growing Cypripediums. I pulled the trigger impulsively, and we'll see how it goes. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into the repot process, and I can explain why this is so different than anything else I've ever done. Now moving forward, you might notice that there are some unusual tools in my toolkit this time around. The first being this spray bottle, which just contains plain distilled water. This orchid is so sensitive to chemical treatment, it is so sensitive to mineral content, it is sensitive to so many things. Oddly enough, not temperature swings or light, it really is comfortable with those. But in terms of what is interacting with its root system, it is super sensitive. So in terms of how I'm going to approach cleaning this orchid, I'm just going to be on the safe side and use distilled water. This is very similar to the pseudo repot method that I used with my Cattleya Purple Blue Hawaii, because I'm just going to try to not disturb it as much as possible and allow its old medium to kind of flush away naturally and it slowly to adapt to the system. The next thing in my toolkit is vinegar. Now, vinegar is acidic. We know this. Well, one of the other things that I learned about the Cypripedium Acaule is that it is a highly acidic grower. So acidic, in fact, that if it's anywhere above 4.5 pH, it will kill the plant super quickly. So that was enough to freak me out. But as I was reading up on its care, a lot of orchid growers were suggesting you just need to be using vinegar with it to make the distilled water more acidic. They're specifically referring to distilled water because if you were to use tap or even reverse osmosis, that could potentially have too much mineral content for this orchid. So what I did was I mixed half of a teaspoon of distilled white vinegar into a half gallon of my just distilled water. And the starting point on the TDS was 0. The TDS went up to 30 ppm. So it's still very low in terms of any solids that it's providing to the orchid. But in terms of the pH, I was so amazed at how quickly it dropped it. It took the pH of the distilled water from 6.5 to 3.8 like that. So I'm hoping that this is going to help. Now what I have here is my leca beads, but I'm pre-treating them in the same solution. So the same 3.8 pH water is pre-soaking with these leca beads. And the whole objective here is to ensure that the grow medium from the start is acidic and feels like home to these plants. In theory, I don't know, this could all go terribly and they could all die in a moment. I'm not sure. So that being said, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start taking some of the leca from here. I'm gonna fill them in the same way I usually do. I'm gonna fill them up to the drainage holes, and then I'm gonna place the orchid and I'm going to fill leca around them. I have all of my semi-hydroponic containers filled up to the drainage holes, and now I'm gonna start placing the plants. Now again, I am not going to clean the soil off of the root system. I'm gonna leave this system intact just as it is, in the hopes that the familiarity of the content of the soil is going to help slowly acclimate this orchid to this environment. Now, a quick disclaimer on this, these orchids are going into a room that is completely separate from my entire orchid collection. And the objective there is, I don't know if these have any insects, I don't know if it has any viruses of any kind. So these are going to be entirely on quarantine. So should something happen, it's not a liability for the rest of the collection. I just think that's important to mention. All right, guys, that was a very long and very tedious process, but I did get all 5 repotted. Now, I have to say intuitively, I'm not feeling great about these plants. I'm really hoping for the best for them, but there's something about them when I'm interacting that they just seem unwell. They seem unhappy to have been plucked out of the ground, which I would be too. And I know that sounds like a weird thing to say, but it's just a sense that I have about them. But that being said, I still want to plow forward because even if all of these fail, it would be a great learning curve and a great experience. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and clean the leaves by just spraying with my distilled water solution. All 5 orchids have been sprayed down with the distilled water, and you can see that they're still pretty dirty. But at this point, these are such a high liability orchid that I'm not even going to push it. I'm just going to leave it at that, and I can worry about how clean the leaves are at a later time. The last step is really to just flush the semi-hydroponic containers with my distilled water and vinegar solution, which has a pH, again, of 3.8, and hope that it really kind of catalyzes the adaptation process. I'm going to watch these closely, but I honestly have no idea what's going to happen, which is in part why all 5 of these orchids I'm going to consider number 30 in my collection. If I can have just one of these really succeed, I will be absolutely thrilled. So we will just have to stay tuned and see what happens from here. Of course, I encourage you to tune in for the monthly orchid updates, and hopefully you will see them there instead of on a in loving memory of my orchids past video. As always, thank you so much for choosing to spend your time with me. You guys mean the world to me. Be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe if you have any questions or concerns. Of course, always feel free to ask. And have a beautiful rest of your night. Bye, guys.